Akamai grew out of a research project at MIT. One of the really great things about CSAIL is that you have experts in a lot of different areas close together. And I think a lot of times the best research is interdisciplinary.
I think probably the genesis of the company really has to start in '96, which is when Danny Lewin joined the theory group at the Lab for Computer Science. And he, working with Tom Leighton, developed some new algorithms for how to efficiently find information in large-scale distributed systems where you can't always rely on individual nodes, individual components. Things can break and often do.
You know, in our case, I was running the algorithms group, and down the hall was Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the web. And you know, one day Tim was talking about some of the challenges he foresaw with the web and its centralized architecture at the time. People would sometimes refer to the web as the World Wide Wait. And that was a great problem for my group to work on because we were specializing in algorithms for large-scale networks and how to move content around or packets around efficiently.
And so you had the right group of people in the right place to be able to solve that problem. And of course, the problem itself is really an engineering problem, but the tools for solving that problem were really the tools of an algorithmist and a mathematician. And I think to this day, a big part of how we solve our problems is we go back to the fundamentals and we use algorithms and we use mathematics to solve these problems so that they will scale and work at the extraordinary scale that we're at today.
And so we developed some pretty cool technology for distributing content, in a better way on the web. And ultimately, this led to Akamai. Yeah, Akamai's original approach or thesis was with content delivery. How do you enable the internet to scale so that people can get whatever content they want quickly and easily? That was the first thing that we accomplished in our first decade really as a company, what we focused on.
I think one reason that CDNs are important and pushing content and pushing compute power out towards the edge of the network is important is, we can't get around physics. And so if you have to go cross country, I think that's like 15 milliseconds, or if you can go next door, that's going to be far faster. And so getting content to you quickly is one of the core reasons you want to push a CDN further out to the edge. And so I think one of the things as you grow your CDN, you're sort of expanding it. So if you think of like a sphere and the surface area of that sphere and expanding it, you create a bigger surface area so that if you have an attack of a given size, you can spread it out over more nodes in a CDN or more of that surface area so that you can mitigate potentially a lot more of that attack traffic and prevent a denial of service for any of your core origin services.
Because we had enough people who had come over from MIT, a lot of the ways in which MIT managed its corporate network influenced how we implemented some of the early systems at Akamai. We implemented a lot of those early systems at Akamai to be able to run securely in a widely distributed model where we couldn't just have everything behind a corporate firewall as people were used to doing.
At this point, I think it's fair to say that Akamai and the research that Tom and Danny did back at MIT invented the content delivery network. And the vast majority of large-scale CDNs that are out there today, which are carrying the vast majority of the traffic on the internet today, are actually patterned after Akamai. But over the decades now that the company's been around, we've expanded into a number of different areas, which include cybersecurity and most recently cloud computing.
Our second decade, we still were doing that and growing that business, but we really pushed hard on security, because that started to become a big issue. And so we developed a lot of capabilities that are very synergistic with delivery, but now you're securing the websites and the content. Most recently, we made major investments in a new approach to cloud computing so that you can have your containers and VMs, not just in a few big data centers, but in hundreds of places around the world, really close to end users. And not only that, but so they can be spun up and scaled on demand. So you don't have to pre-position your containers where you think you'll need them, or pre-position the number you think you'll need. They'll just pop up, in response to user demand. So we have evolved our capabilities and grown them over the years.
Historically, Akamai has said, here's how you can use our compute, and here with cloud computing, it's like, here's some compute. Customers, be as creative as you want to be.
Being a professor is very different than being a CEO. But I do think background as a professor can be very useful, in being a business executive. As a professor, you teach, and being able to communicate with employees and customers and investors, where you're going, why we do certain things. And also, having experience in business, I think, can be useful when teaching students, because you have now a practical viewpoint, a lens into what goes on in the real world. I think the MIT community is just fabulous. It's a great place to learn. You're with very smart people. It's a great culture. I find it to be very technically open, challenging, honest. I find it to be a great environment to start a company, grow a company. At Akamai, we never wanted to move to the West Coast. You don't have to. I think it's great here, because you can stay, connected to the MIT community, which I think is really the best in the world. We're making a difference. We help secure pretty much everything on the internet today. We help the internet work a lot better than it would otherwise. And we're about to take, the next step, both in security, because the attackers are taking their next step with more sophisticated attacks, and also in cloud computing.
Everybody talks about being a visionary, but sometimes being a visionary is actually very pragmatic. It's about listening to your customers and being open-minded and creating a vision that is aligned to your customers and to the reality of the world that you're living in.
I think one of the greatest achievements that Akamai's had is helping the internet scale. Back when we started, it was very hard, or if not impossible, to run a large-scale event on the internet. Akamai's traffic has gone from peaks in the hundreds of megabits and gigabits range up to being hundreds of terabits per second of traffic at peak. That scale has been impressive, but that scale has also unlocked a lot of the capabilities. A lot of these things that people take for granted on the internet today.
If you're developing code, you're basically probably deploying code that's touching the lives of everybody on the planet in some way, shape, or form, whether they're going in and checking, a stock ticker that we're helping provide, or they're buying something, or they're checking their medical records. There's likely an opportunity for us to help. And with the addition of security in the last decade, and more recently cloud computing, I think the opportunities for us to be flexible and to help our customers help the world just keeps expanding, and it's humbling, frankly, to have been a part of it, and to continue to be a part of that.
And that's what we do at Akamai. We're making all that possible. We're defining the future, innovating to solve the hard problems. It's exciting.